and he starts screaming out, "I want some fat burger! Get me some fat burger!" This one was with a high-profile athlete, and he just walks into the signing and goes, I think he was just in a Netflix and chill mode the night before. Stuff from a Kevin Garnett signing was missing. Without missing a beat, Willie says to the guy, "How much you got?" Welcome back to another episode of the Powers Sports Memorabilia Show. I am your host, Matt Powers. Thank you again for joining me. Please visit the website, powersportsmemorabilia.com. Also, give me a follow over there on Instagram at Powers Autographs. Well, today's video is going to be a bit different than some of the other ones I have been making. This one is going to be all about my favorite autograph signing stories. Now, keep in mind, these are the ones that I can share here on YouTube. Since this is a family-friendly show, they will be nice and clean. Also, on some of these stories, I'm going to have to keep some of the athletes' names anonymous for obvious reasons. I will also share with you today some of my favorite athletes to work with. So stay tuned until the end of this video where I share my favorite story with one of the greatest baseball players of all time. So first off, before I jump into some of these stories, I wanted to talk about some of my favorite athletes to do autograph signings with. You know, athletes can sometimes get a bad rap, and you know, yes, there are some more difficult ones to work with out there. However, in my experience, 90+% of them are great people. Sometimes they have bad days, yes, like all of us do here, but most of them are really great people, and they are just awesome to work with. And so here are some of my favorite athletes to do autograph signings with. Number one, Ronnie Lott. Now, the company I used to work for before starting Powers Sports Memorabilia did a autograph signing with Lott back in the early 2000s, and it was a tough autograph signing to get set up. It took a long time to earn Ronnie's trust and get him to agree to do the signing. Tommy was one of our employees at the company there, and he was the one that was dealing with Ronnie, and he did a great job just getting the signing set up and helping Ronnie make that decision and really befriending Ronnie. And Ronnie's just a great guy. So Ronnie, for those of you who don't know, is a very successful business guy outside of football. At that time, he had a bunch of Mercedes-Benz dealerships up there in Oregon. He also had some capital company that he was joint ventures with Harris Barton in Joe, Montana. So Ronnie's a very, very smart guy outside of the football field here. So Ronnie agrees to do the signing, and he's running a few minutes late for the signing. Now, granted, he was coming from a long ways away, so that was totally understandable. And he always, kept in contact over the phone and whatnot. So the guy was just was top notch as always. Great communicator and very, very professional. So, anyways, he comes into the signing, and being a few minutes late, he's apologizing. But Ronnie way made up for being late for that signing, because guess what? He brought all 4 of his Super Bowl rings to the signing. And even better than that, not only was he showing them off to everybody, he actually let fans try them on. I mean, imagine being a huge 49ers fan and one of your heroes, Ronnie Lott, who I think everybody would say would be an absolute cool stud of an athlete to meet. I mean, we all heard about his pinky story. And he gets you to try on his 4 Super Bowl rings. I mean, how many times in your life are you going to have an opportunity to do that? Very, very few. And Ronnie was just so cool that day. Very professional, signed everybody's items, and was just very, very personable. And that's what you're looking for when you're doing autograph signings with guys, is how personable can they be with the fans and how likable are they? And Ronnie was definitely way up there. I know he made so many memories for so many loyal fans that day. And number 2 is Grant Wistrom. For those of you who don't know who Grant is, former 3-time national champion at Nebraska. Also won a Super Bowl with the St. Louis Rams. And I see Grant about once or so a year to have him sign some stuff. And he is just always so courteous. One of the best things about Grant is he has a ton of really solid inscriptions to do, and he takes his time with every single one. Very legible handwriting, great autograph, very chill guy. He's actually lost all of his football weight. He does CrossFit now, and he's gotten into the CBD business. But again, he's always available to sign items. Just a very chill guy, very down-to-earth guy as well. Does a ton of charity work, and one of my favorite guys, with my wife being from Nebraska, she loves, of course, the Cornhuskers. So I've always got to do a signing with Grant Wistrom. I love working with Grant, and he is definitely one of the good guys in the business. And number 3, speaking of CrossFit, I'm going to throw a name out there some of you probably haven't heard of before, is Rich Froning, CrossFit Games champion, basically the face of the sport for quite a while now. I wanted to get a signing set up with him a few years back, and I didn't have a direct connection in with Rich. And I did see that he was constantly communicating with someone on social media, and I thought I would reach out to that person to see if they can help get the signing set up with Rich. And it turns out he was kind of sort of his agent, but not really, kind of more of an advisor to him. And so it took about 4 months of kind of going back and forth with him, and ended up getting a deal set up with Rich. And at that time, nobody had done really any autograph signings with any CrossFit athletes. So I was kind of the first kid on the block. And the signing was going to happen at his old CrossFit Mayhem gym out there in Tennessee. And two of my buddies wanted to go out to the signing, and really cool stuff here. They ended up landing here back in Kansas City at about 3 o'clock. And they had to go home, let the dogs out, and take care of some stuff. And so we ended up leaving here in Kansas City at about 5 o'clock, drove through the night to get up to Tennessee there, and ended up staying at my buddy's uncle's house there in Brentwood, Tennessee. Woke up the next morning, drove down to the signing, and walked in, of course. And if you know anything about Rich, you know he's a big Christian guy and loves working out, obviously. And so we walk in there to his gym, and he's got Christian music just blaring everywhere, and he's working out. And it was just like we expected when we would come in there to see Rich, what he was doing. But we had about 500 pieces for him to sign, all photos, and it took about an hour or so for him to sign them all. And it was just a cool signing from this perspective, just to be able to sit down with him and talk about not just fitness, but hunting, other sports, and just to get his overall personal perspective on life things. I think is one of the best parts about doing autograph signings, is getting to know guys on a personal level, but getting to hear their personal thoughts on everyday kind of stuff. Not just the sports stuff, but hey, what do they think about this athlete, or what do they think about going on in their personal lives or their families and whatnot. I think that's kind of the really cool stuff, because it just brings such a simple personality out of them, and you really get to know them, and they can relate to you, and you can relate to them. And I think that's just one of the best parts about doing autograph signings. So Rich was signing all his pieces, and he was signing them out there, and his hand was cramping up, which is kind of funny because the guy is a top of the peer fitness guy. But the one thing that was going to break him down was signing 500 autographs. But it does take a lot out of an athlete to sign all those pieces. Your hand does cramp up, and you got to take breaks. But Rich signed them all, and they turned out great. One of my favorite pieces. And so after the signing, we pack everything up, and my buddies and I, we drive all the way back to Kansas City, another 8-9 hours or whatnot. And that was just a great memory from my perspective. Having a couple friends go out, take part in the signing with Rich, and then we get to talk about it afterwards, and shoot the stuff on the way back. And it was just a super fun signing, and definitely one that I will always remember. All right, now let's move on to some of my favorite autograph signing stories. Now, I got to keep it clean here, and these are just some of the easier ones that I can tell here and share here on YouTube, right? So, but let's go ahead and jump into this. Number one was doing a signing with a former Oakland Raider back in the early 2000s, and he was a great guy. We were having a blast doing the signing. Very funny dude, and towards the end of the signing, like a lot of athletes do, he was getting kind of hungry, and he stops what he's doing. He's just signing a couple of pieces to finish up here. And he starts screaming out, "I want some fat burger. Get me some fat burger." And my buddy and I, who were at the signing there, were just looking at each other like, he wants, fat burger? Like, what an odd choice. But if you don't know what fat burger is, it's kind of similar to McDonald's. It started out in California, so it's fairly popular out there. But So one of us had to go get him some fat burger because that's what he was dead set on. He absolutely wanted to have some fat burger. So he makes a laundry list of stuff that he wants from there, the shakes and burgers and all that kind of stuff. And we had to go get him all these things. And he ended up finished up the signing, was a very, very happy camper at the end of the day. All right, number 2, this one actually happened fairly recently. And what some of you don't know is occasionally the price the athlete agrees to charge you to do the autograph signings, that can sometimes change, even if you have a contract. It just depends on their mood sometimes, and also depends on who's talking in their ear and telling them information. This one happened to have some family members that were talking to him, and they were telling the athlete, hey, we don't think that you're charging enough for the signing. And of course, naturally the athlete agrees to sign, kind of about half of the pieces that we agreed to at the old pricing, but they wanted to get basically double the price for the remaining pieces. All right. So it's always interesting too when a family member starts chiming in on an autograph signing. Typically they know nothing about the autograph industry or how it's done, or you've already agreed to a price and that's what you got to follow. But sometimes that's just the way it goes. But at this point as a dealer, you're kind of put in a tough spot. I mean, do you tell them no, or do you get them signed? I mean, if you don't get them signed, then you're going to have some very angry customers, and if you do get them signed, then potentially you've lost out on money at this point. So this one took a couple days of negotiations, but we ended up doing the rest of the signing with the athlete. And so it's just a reminder that while some signings go smooth, most inevitably have some sort of issue, either with price or timing, and it's usually price. But for those of you guys who don't do autograph signing, you'll be amazed at how often your items get this close to not getting signed because of some sort of issue with the athlete regarding to the price. So it's really amazing. Most of the time it works out, but there are a lot of times out there where the stuff is like, wow, is this stuff going to actually get signed? All right, number 3, this one was with a high profile athlete. And it was going to be a tough signing based off of the reaction that he made when he walked into the conference room there. So he walks in and sees basically like about 1,000+ pieces all laid out for him to sign. And he just walks into the signing and goes, and you can tell this was like the last thing that this athlete wanted to be doing at this particular time. So he begins to sign the stuff, and everything's kind of going well for a little while, and then about halfway through the signing, he just stops signing, walks out, and says, "I'm done. I'm done." And I think he was just pissed because pretty much every item had to have some sort of inscription on there. And athletes for the most part hate signing inscriptions. It just takes so much time. You gotta make sure you spell everything right and do all that stuff. They'd rather just sign their name and move on. So at this particular time, when an athlete says they're done, they're done. You pretty much cannot convince them, in most cases, to come back in and sign. If they say they're done, that's it for that particular day or for whatever's going on there. So that's why, side note, when you do an autograph signing, you always want to get the bigger pieces signed first, like the basketballs and the helmets. That way, in case the athlete doesn't sign, you don't have to ship those bigger, bulky items to another location at a later date. You always want to get those done first. It really helps keep your costs down. So the athlete, again, he just walked out, and about 2 weeks later, he ended up finishing out the autograph signing, and everything turned out great, and it was kind of funny and interesting at the same time. But it's just a reminder, though, that, I mean, like going back to the previous story, you're always like this close, it seems like, on every single signing with these high-profile guys of stuff not getting done the right way or stuff not getting signed. Most of the time, it fortunately works out, but there's always some sort of hoops that you got to jump through. And number 4, this is another recent one from last year. For this particular guy, we had all the stuff set up at the hotel conference room for the athlete to sign. And if you don't know too much about autograph signings, that's typically the best place to do an autograph signing is in a conference room. You've got plenty of room to lay all the stuff out there. And we had about 750 pieces or so for this guy to sign. And the athlete was actually staying at the hotel. He was just a couple floors up there. And so he's supposed to come down and sign all this stuff somewhere around like 5 o'clock or so. And so this is a private signing, so he's not going to be doing any interaction with the public. And, about an hour goes by or so, and then he calls down and asks if we can bring all these items up to his hotel room because he doesn't want to leave his hotel room. And let me just remind you that we are just 3 floors down in the conference room. Okay, it's not like we are, down the street or in the next city over. And all he has to do is just walk down the stairs or take the elevator and sign the stuff. But of course, we tell him no. Say, logistically, we just can't take all 750 pieces of these up to your room, and they're just not all going to fit. It's just not going to work out. So he changes the time around, agrees to come down the next morning and sign all the items. So basically, we just sat down in that conference room the previous night for about 4 hours and didn't get anything signed. Fortunately, the next day rolls around. He comes down at the prescribed time and signs everything, and everything got signed perfectly. One of the great guys too. This guy is. I really enjoy him. He's one of my favorite guys. I think he was just in a Netflix and chill mode the night before, which I totally get it. That's fine. If you're not in a mood to sign, I get it. I'd rather have the athlete be in a mood to sign and give the best quality autograph and best inscriptions as possible. But he just was not going to sign the night before, and again, I don't blame him. He wasted my time a little bit, but I kind of expect that with most signings. I don't expect most signings to be over and done with at their prescribed time. So it's definitely understandable sometimes, but I'm just glad everything turned out for the customers. Everything looked super. All right, number 5, last story before we jump into my all-time favorite autograph signing story. This one happened about 5 years ago, and it didn't have anything to do with the athlete, and it wasn't even my stuff, but one I thought was just super crazy because it was very easily avoidable. Stuff from a Kevin Garnett signing was missing, and the tracking for that particular package just wasn't showing up. It wasn't scanned in. No one had any idea where this package was. And it was basically like $20,000 worth of stuff. So, a good chunk of stuff missing here. And about 2 weeks goes by, and a call finally comes in from Spalding. And they basically said that, hey, listen, we have this package here. Is this yours? And of course, the guy's package who it was, yeah. So he was so thankful they found the stuff, and of course he ended up getting it back from Spalding. Well, actually, what happened is the shipping label that was on the package. Originally, it was going to Spalding, I think, so it was maybe some balls that were going back and forth or whatnot. Well, somebody had forgotten to cover up that shipping label and didn't put on a new label. So whenever UPS or FedEx came by to pick it up, well, they just picked it up, saw the one label on there going to Spalding, and basically sent it right back to Spalding. So no one knew that this package was actually en route there. So that's why they couldn't track it at any time. It didn't have the correct label on it. But just a reminder, when you're shipping stuff, or when you're shipping stuff to a signing or back from a signing, make sure you cover up all the labels so that only the correct label is on there. So that way, when UPS or FedEx picks that up, that they know exactly where to take that package. Whoever package that was, they got extremely lucky to find that. Okay, now it is time for my favorite athlete story of all time. This one has to do with the great Willie Mays. Now, I love Willie. He's one of my favorite players too, but he has a interesting personality for those who have met him. Definitely comes from a different era and a different way of thinking on some things, but Willie is an absolute character, and I've always enjoyed my interactions with Willie. I always seem to walk away with at least a couple stories, and this is one of my favorite ones here. So we were doing a signing with Mays probably about 2004, 2005. And around that time, it was very rare for Willie to do a public autograph signing. In fact, he doesn't really do them anymore at all. So this was a huge deal to have a public autograph signing for Willie Mays. Willie just doesn't do these. And people were flying in from all over the country to do the signing. They were coming in from Alabama, New York, Texas, Virginia. I mean, this was like their one shot to meet Willie and get something signed. So it was a huge deal. Very expensive signing. It was about $700 to sign a jersey. And this is back in 04, 05. So that's a ton of money there. About $200 to sign baseballs. So just astronomical prices for that time. But hey, it definitely was Willie Mays. People were going to be willing to pay that price. The signing was just packed. The line was out the door expectedly. Very busy inside. Lots of moving parts. Trying to keep the customers happy and of course Willie happy. So this guy walks in. He walks up to the sales counter where I'm at and says he's got this huge painting that he wants Willie to sign. And he thought he was coming up to the sales desk there to see if he could bring it in through the back to where he was parked because there was nowhere to park around the store. So I say, yeah, come on, bring it in. Brings in this painting, and it's this huge Leroy Neiman of Willie. I mean, if I remember correctly, I think this thing was taller than me. It was just a massive piece. So this was this guy's like one shot to get this thing signed by Willie, and he knew it, So, when it comes to artwork with most athletes, and especially Willie, they don't really have a set pricing. Like with Willie, he just kind of charges kind of whatever he feels like charging. So Willie takes a break from signing and comes up to this guy to, see what he's got and, negotiate a price to sign it. And the customer starts telling Willie, he's a huge fan and he would be honored if he would sign this painting for him and how much would it be? So Willie takes a look at the painting and then he kind of looks at the guy and kind of looks back to the painting and he turns without missing a beat and Willie says to the guy, "How much you got?" And the customer, is kind of thrown off of this and he was expecting a price, not to be expecting how much money he has. And so the customer kind of, thinks about it for a second and he knows he's got to come up with a big number, right? Because Willie's not going to be signing this thing for $500, So he thinks about it for a second and he turns to Willie and says, "Mr. Mays, how about $2,500? And Willie thinks about it for a second and Willie knows he's got him. Willie knows that this guy is going to pretty much pay whatever he says. And Willie says, "How about $3,000?" And the customer, knowing full well that he's going to pay whatever Willie says too, and he thinks about it for a second just to kind of ponder on it, and he says, "Okay, that's fine." So he agrees to sign the painting for $3,000. They shake on it, and Willie ends up signing it right on the left-hand side there in black, and a nice big bold signature. It looked really, really super, but. So funny thing about that is also the side note for this particular signing, we were doing the signing pretty much almost at cost. It was more of a promotion for the business and a promotion for this particular store. So off of that $3,000, I think we actually, and if we didn't break even, we probably lost money with all the credit card fees. But I just remember this customer in this particular story with Willie and him turning and asking him how much he had. That was just iconic Willie Mays, and customer very fortunate to get that piece signed because due to that size, I mean, there's no way you're shipping that to and from a signing. So customer very lucky to get that piece done, and I'm curious what that piece would be worth nowadays. I mean, definitely having a Leroy Neiman signed by Willie Mays has got to have an astronomical price tag to it. So again, I hope you guys liked this video and enjoyed some of these stories, but comment below. Let me know of any fun or clean stories that you can share about any autograph signing stories that you've had, any funny ones there. Definitely always enjoy hearing those. Again, visit the website powersportsmemorabilia.com and also give me a follow over there on Instagram @PowersAutographs, and I will see you on the next episode.